This manual existed for 60 years, and it teaches something that will get most civilians killed, because what feels right in a crisis is usually wrong. FM 21-76, the United States Army Survival Manual, written by soldiers who had eaten bark in jungles you've never heard of, revised through decades of actual wars, declassified, sitting in plain sight, and almost nobody reads it correctly. They skim the shelter diagrams, screenshot the edible plants page, tell themselves they're prepared. They're not. What they miss are the counterintuitive rules buried inside. The decisions that feel wrong in the moment but save your life. The instincts the manual explicitly tells you to override, because those instincts will kill you faster than the disaster will. Now, FM 21-76 was written for jungles and deserts, not apartment buildings. So here's what we're doing today: pulling the core principles from the manual and applying them to the urban world most of us actually live in. 8 rules, 8 moments where your gut will lie to you. And if you get even 3 of these right when it matters, you will outlast 90% of the people around you. Let's go. Rule 1. Stay versus leave. This is the decision that kills more people than dehydration, exposure, or injury combined. And the military is brutally clear. Most civilians get it completely wrong. When things go bad, people want to move. It feels like survival. It feels like agency, like you're doing something instead of waiting to be caught. That feeling is a trap. Here's the math the manual's built on. When you are in a known location with shelter, water access, and relative security, your odds of survival are dramatically higher than when you're moving through unknown terrain. Movement burns calories, burns water, exposes you to weather, terrain hazards, and the single most dangerous thing in any grid-down scenario: other desperate people who are also moving. A twisted ankle on day 1 is an inconvenience. By day 3, it's a death sentence. And most people don't realize that until it's too late. The manual gives you 5 questions before you make this decision. Is your location imminently dangerous? Not uncomfortable, not stressful, but physically immediately dangerous. Do you have a specific destination with higher survival odds, not just a direction that feels safer? Do you have the resources to reach it? Do you know the route? And is the threat moving towards you, or is it stationary? If you can't say yes to question 1 and give solid answers to the rest, you stay. Hurricane Katrina, 2005. 2 families, same neighborhood, same moment. One panicked, grabbed what they could, fled into flooded highway corridors on foot with no route and no destination. Many were never accounted for in the immediate aftermath. The other family sheltered on their upper floor, marked their rooftop with a white bedsheet, and waited. Helicopter rescue, 52 hours later. Same disaster, same city, one decision. This is where people die, not from the disaster itself, but from the decision made in the first 2 hours. Stay until the math forces you to move. And in the first 24 hours, the math almost never forces you to move. Rule 1 is about staying alive long enough to need water. Rule 2 is about actually having it. Rule 2, the fire hydrant. Most people don't know this exists, and in a grid-down scenario, it might be the difference between finding water and not finding water. When pumping stations lose power, the water grid doesn't instantly go dry. It bleeds down slowly. Residential tap pressure drops to 0 first, but the water main underground still holds standing water for hours, sometimes days, depending on your elevation and how close you are to a reservoir. Fire hydrants in most major cities connect directly to that main, several feet underground. They use a dry barrel design. The valve sits below ground. Water only fills the barrel when the hydrant is opened. So when your tap runs dry, the hydrant may still have access to residual water in the main that simply can't push itself up through residential plumbing anymore. Most people don't know this. Even fewer act on it. To open one, you need a pentagon socket wrench, a fire hydrant key. The 5-sided bolt exists specifically to prevent unauthorized access. These cost almost nothing at plumbing supply stores. You can get one right now, today, before anything goes wrong. That's the window. Right now, before you need it, because once you need it, the window is already closed. Any water from a post-failure hydrant must be treated. The main pressure that normally prevents backflow contamination is gone. Boil it for 1 minute, or use unscented bleach. roughly 1/8 teaspoon per gallon of clear water, 1/4 teaspoon for cloudy. Wait 30 minutes. The deeper principle here is what FM 21-76 calls resource awareness in environment. The survivor isn't the one with the best gear. It's the one who sees a fire hydrant as a water source before they're thirsty enough to need it. The fire hydrant key costs almost nothing. The water inside it, after the grid goes down, is worth everything. You have water now. Rule 3 tells you exactly why eating it away is one of the deadliest mistakes you can make. Rule 3. Stop eating before you stop drinking. Most people get this wrong. Dangerously wrong. Your body breaks down protein and produces a waste called urea. Flushing urea out of your bloodstream costs water through urination. Eating protein without adequate water doesn't sustain you. It dehydrates you faster than if you'd eaten nothing at all. The Army manual is direct about this. When water is scarce, food is a liability. A healthy adult survives 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water. If you have limited water and a bag full of beef jerky, eating that beef jerky is accelerating your death, not preventing it. Your body doesn't care that you think you're making the smart call. In the first 24 to 48 hours of food deprivation, your body draws on glycogen stores, converting them to glucose without generating significant metabolic waste. The hunger is real, but it's manageable. What isn't manageable is the decision to eat protein while your water supply is uncertain. After the Haiti earthquake in 2010, field medical teams documented a consistent pattern. Survivors pulled from rubble after 48 to 72 hours who found any source of water, even contaminated water they'd instinctively rationed, were in significantly better neurological condition than those who had found food but no water. The body can negotiate with hunger. It cannot negotiate with dehydration. Water first, always. Food is a reward for having solved water. You've solved water. You've solved food order. Rule 4 tells you exactly why being warm means being safe. Rule 4, the sweat death problem. Standard civilian cold weather logic. Wear more layers, stay warm, preserve heat. That logic applied incorrectly will kill you. FM 21-76 calls it the sweat death problem. In cold environments, when you're moving, building shelter, gathering resources, navigating, your body generates heat. That heat creates sweat. Sweat soaks your insulating layers. Wet insulation has a fraction of the thermal resistance of dry insulation. When you stop moving and sit down to rest, that wet layer becomes a cold compress pressed directly against your skin, and your core temperature drops. Fast. Not gradually, fast. The military protocol is to regulate your layers before you start sweating. Before physical exertion in the cold, remove an insulating layer. You'll feel cold when you start. That's correct. Your body heat will rise to meet the activity level within minutes. Start cold, stay dry. When you stop exerting, briefly open your jacket and collar to vent the moisture, then reclose your insulation before your core temperature drops. The window is narrow. Catch it and you've eliminated the hazard. Miss it and you're sleeping in a wet compress. The layer you take off before you start moving is the one that keeps you alive when you stop. You've managed the cold, you've managed your body. Now rule 5, because none of it matters if nobody can find you. Rule 5, signaling. Here's the instinct. When things go bad, stay hidden. Don't draw attention. Don't let anyone know where you are. In a prolonged societal breakdown with no rescue coming, that logic has merit. But FM 21-76 is built around the more statistically common scenario, a bounded emergency where rescue infrastructure is operational and actively looking for you. In that scenario, hiding will get you killed. The probability of rescue is proportional to the probability of detection. Full stop. Most people, asked how to signal, describe making noise or waving. Close-range signals, useless beyond shouting distance. The manual focuses on area signals, visible from aircraft from miles away. 3 fires in a triangle is the universal distress signal, recognized globally. A mirror or any polished metal surface aimed at aircraft is visible at distances far exceeding smoke. A large X or SOS on a rooftop in high-contrast material cuts through visual chaos in a way that frantic ground-level movement never will. After the 2023 Turkey earthquake, aerial rescue teams reported that rooftop signals, sheets, painted marks, geometric shapes made from debris were the primary method for prioritizing searches in dense urban rubble. Noise didn't carry, movement blended into the chaos. Geometric contrast on flat surfaces got people found. You cannot be rescued if you cannot be found. In a bounded emergency, visible is the only thing that matters. You can be found now. Rule 6 is about the 96 hours between being found and not surviving long enough to matter. Rule 6, the 96-hour window. This is the window where everything is won or lost, and most people spend it doing nothing. Hours 0 to 6, most people assume it's temporary. They check their phones, wait for updates, go to sleep expecting normalcy. That's statistically reasonable. Most outages resolve in hours. But the people who will thrive in a prolonged event are treating those first 6 hours completely differently. They're filling every water container, auditing food, locating physical maps, because in a prolonged grid-down event, your phone navigation dies with the grid. Charging backup power from car adapters, making the stay versus leave assessment right now while it's still calm enough to think. Those 6 hours wasted are unrecoverable. You don't get them back. Not at hour 12, not at hour 24, never. Hour 6 to 24, your refrigerator hits the threshold where food safety is an active decision. A standard fridge keeps food safe for approximately 4 hours without power. A full freezer holds 48 hours. Half-full freezer, 24. You are triaging now. Refrigerator contents consumed first because that clock is already burning. Hours 24 to 72. Sleep degrades without climate control. Stress hormones spike. Decision quality drops significantly. This is the window FM 21-76 addresses directly as rest as a survival resource. The person who forces themselves to rest at hour 36 makes better decisions at hour 48. The person who pushes through on adrenaline is making emotionally reactive, degraded decisions by hour 48. This is the mistake. Adrenaline feels productive. It isn't. It's borrowing capacity from tomorrow that you won't be able to repay. This connects to the most important section in the entire manual, what FM 21-76 calls the enemy within. The manual doesn't list cold or thirst or terrain as the primary threats to survival. It lists fear, panic, boredom, and guilt. These states impair judgment and accelerate fatal decisions faster than almost any external threat. Panic feels like urgency. It produces outcomes identical to incompetence. The 96-hour window is won or lost in the first 6 hours. React early, react correctly, and every hour after that gets easier. You've managed your time. You've managed your mind. Rule 7 is about seeing what's already around you before desperation forces you to look. Rule 7. Urban foraging logic. Survival content talks about foraging like you're going to find berries and roots in a park. That's not urban foraging. Urban foraging is understanding that every city is a structured resource matrix and knowing where the resources actually are before you need them. After infrastructure failure, resources exist in 3 tiers. Tier 1 is what people took with them, gone within hours. Tier 2 is what people left behind because they didn't recognize its value. Tier 3 is what was never considered a resource until the context changed. Tier 2 and 3, that's where you operate. Because Tier 1 is a competition, and competitions burn calories and generate violence. Tier 2. Hardware stores in any major city carry more survival-critical material than most dedicated prepper shops. Not just tools, PVC fittings for water channeling, plastic sheeting, and pool shock. Pool shock is calcium hypochlorite at roughly 70% concentration. A single pound of it can treat tens of thousands of gallons of water. That's sitting on a shelf in every pool supply store right now. Most people will walk right past it. Tier 3. Commercial restaurant walk-in coolers maintain safe food temperatures far longer than residential units due to insulation density and volume. A walk-in in an abandoned restaurant may hold safely cold food 72 hours after grid failure, while your home fridge was compromised at hour 5. Most people walk past restaurants and see abandoned buildings. The trained eye sees a cold storage asset. On food selection, cooking oil carries roughly 4,000 calories per pound, higher caloric density than almost any other shelf-stable food. White rice is close to ideal from a pure survival standpoint. 1,600 calories per pound, minimal metabolic water cost compared to protein, stable for decades in sealed storage, requiring only water and heat. The survival nutritional hierarchy is carbohydrates first, fats second, protein last. In a collapse, every resource is hiding in plain sight. The question is whether you've trained your eyes to see it before you need it. You can find resources now. Rule 8 is the one that determines whether any of it matters, because if this goes wrong in the first 10 seconds, nothing else you've done can save the person in front of you. Rule 8, field medicine triage. Most people get this catastrophically wrong, and in a medical emergency, wrong kills fast. The manual's entire field medicine philosophy rests on one principle: treat what kills first, not what looks worst, not what's loudest, what kills first. The physiological sequence in which injuries kill goes airway obstruction, then breathing failure, then uncontrolled hemorrhage. A person with a compound fracture screaming in pain has a survivable injury if their airway is clear and they're not bleeding out. A person lying quietly with an obstructed airway is dying and may not be drawing any attention to it at all. This exact dynamic killed people after the 2004 bomb earthquake in Iran. Volunteers with no formal training rushed to the most dramatic visible injuries: fractures, crush wounds, lacerations, while unconscious survivors with compromised airways died within meters. 10 seconds to tilt a head back and clear an airway. 10 seconds that almost no untrained person thinks to spend. For bleeding, direct pressure, sustained, not repeatedly lifted to check. 2 minutes of continuous pressure before assessing, because lifting restarts the clotting process. Most people check within 30 seconds. That cycle of lift, check, reapply is a primary reason improvised first aid fails. When direct pressure can't control limb hemorrhage, improvise a tourniquet 2 to 3 inches above the wound, tighten until bleeding stops, and write the application time on the person's skin. Tourniquet time is critical information for any medic who takes over. Apply it, leave it, note the time. On wounds, clean before you close. In a field context without antibiotics, infection kills people who survive the initial injury. Irrigate aggressively with the cleanest water you have, under pressure if possible. A sealed wound trapping debris and bacteria is more dangerous than an open wound that's been irrigated clean. In a medical emergency, the thing you notice first is almost never the thing that kills first. Airway, breathing, bleeding. In that order, every time. And now the final rule, the one that costs nothing and matters most. The most important survival preparation you will ever do is mental rehearsal, not gear acquisition. The preparedness industry is overwhelmingly about things: bags, tools, stockpiles. Those things have value, but what research consistently shows separates survivors from casualties isn't equipment. It's the ability to construct a mental model of a scenario before it happens. To have already asked yourself, what do I do if the power goes out and doesn't come back? What do I do if I have to leave on foot in an hour? What do I do if I have to source water from my immediate environment? The person who has asked and answered those questions, even imperfectly, has a cognitive head start that no amount of gear compensates for. The military calls this battle rhythm, the capacity to function within a known framework even when conditions are chaotic, because the framework was built before the chaos arrived. Most civilians have never mentally rehearsed a grid-down scenario beyond, "I'd probably figure it out." That gap between "probably figure it out" and "I have a plan I've walked through" is where most civilian casualties actually originate, not from lack of gear, from decision paralysis in the first 6 hours, when decisions are still cheap and reversible, followed by desperate reactive choices at hour 48, when every option costs more and most are already closed. Protection, location, water, food. That sequence, internalized now in a calm room with no immediate threat, becomes an automatic override the moment everything around you stops being calm. You don't have to figure out what matters most under pressure because you already know. FM 21-76 has been sitting in plain sight for 60 years. The people who read it correctly, who extracted not just the techniques but the logic underneath, built a different relationship with risk. Not paranoia, not doomsday mythology, something quieter, the capacity to stay calm in the first 6 hours, to make the right call on staying versus leaving, to see a fire hydrant as a water source, to manage the enemy within with the same discipline they bring to every physical resource. The document wasn't written for you. The physics of hypothermia don't care. The biochemistry of dehydration doesn't ask your rank. The psychology of panic doesn't negotiate. This manual existed for 60 years. Now you've read it. The only question left is whether you act on it before you need to. Because when that moment comes, you won't have time to think. You'll only have time to follow whatever you've already decided.